All right, what's up, everybody? We're back for another day in the NBA. The NBA is a little crazy right now. I was a little sad to start seeing the news that my Timberwolves are starting to go down to COVID, but it feels like every team is going to sooner or later, and they're going to just have to get through it. So, all this COVID news and people being out, I think it's going to create some good spots for us. It's also going to create some spots that are a little tricky to cap. But we'll walk through it, and you can let me know what you think. I'll share the best spots that I can find. So let's just walk through this one at a time as soon as I find my spot here. All right. First game tonight, we've got Philadelphia 76ers, Boston Celtics. This was one that was iffy and was not on the board for a little while, but it is now. Comment from Kim. Dame killed us yesterday. He did actually. Memphis's offense killed us more than anything. Portland didn't score too much, but Memphis couldn't get the scoring going either. So hopefully we'll run it back better today, but still had a good week. So Philly and Boston. First, we got to talk about everybody who's out. So game time decision: Maxey, Green, and Embiid. I think I saw Korkmaz is out for sure now. Actually, Drummond, Milton, and Yang are all out. On the Boston side, we got Langford, Schroeder, Tatum. All of them are game time decisions. Horford, Parker, Richardson, and Williams are all out. That's Grant Williams, not Robert Williams. So a lot of people out on both sides here. And really, I think that there is a lot that comes down to whether Joel Embiid plays here or not. If they have Embiid out along with all these other people, Philly is really not a very good team. And Boston still has a few pieces that are decent. And we might still get some of these guys actually playing. But let's look at a few of the numbers, just because I think there's enough people in here for some of the numbers to still matter. So Philly is on a 3-game losing streak right now. In their last 5, they really haven't been scoring well is the big thing. Last 5 away, the same thing. They had one game where they had 119 kind of broke out, but that was against Charlotte. And what team doesn't break out offensively against Charlotte? We'll get to that a little bit later on this slate. But Philly's a team that's just not putting up a lot of points. They're actually below 100 a lot of the time. And then they're giving up a decent amount. They do hold their opponents down once in a while, but their opponents are around 110 a decent amount of the time. Boston on the other side, in their last 5, they've been scoring the ball pretty decent. They did have one game where they only scored 90, but other than that, they've been 107 or higher, and the other 3 were over 110. So they've been scoring the ball decent lately, allowing about the same as what they're giving up. In terms of a few key numbers here, one is Boston's 3-point percentage. When it's 34% or better, they're 12-5. Philadelphia allows opponents to shoot 37.1% away from home, and they've allowed opponents to shoot over 34% in 4 out of 5 and 8 out of 10. So I would say this looks like a good spot for Boston. You know, we look for these areas where a team needs to do well in a certain area and the team they're playing is weaker. Seems like that might be the case tonight because those aren't great numbers for Philadelphia. Boston's shooting, on the other hand, they shoot 35.9% from three-point range at home, and they've been over 34 in 3 out of their last 5 and 7 out of their last 10. So again, you know, there's no guarantees, but this looks like a spot where Boston should have a good shot at hitting that number. On the other side, Philadelphia, when they have 45% or better field goal percentage, they're 13-3. So that's a key number for them. Boston does allow 44.7% at home field goal percentage, but they've only allowed teams to go over 45 in 1 of the last 5 games and 4 out of the last 10. And Philly's only shot 46% or better in 1 of the last 5 and 4 out of the last 10. So while certainly it's not a terrible spot for Philly, it's not a great spot either. And again, with the rosters being different, we do have to take that into account. And that's where I do say Embiid, I think, is a big deal, because if Embiid can play inside some, that ups that field goal percentage. And if he's not there, it just takes that away and leaves them with very little offense. Looking at the trends overall, really, there's not super strong trends leaning either way on the over or under. The under has the total's gone under in 4 out of the last 5 where Philly plays at Boston, but there's a few trends that go the other way. There is a little bit of a lean toward Philly against the spread here. They're 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 against Boston. And that's where, if Embiid is playing, I still think I would have a little bit of a lean toward Philly here. I kind of hate betting Philly because they just don't score much and they've let me down a few times. But I think in terms of the numbers that we're seeing, the players who are out, especially if Tatum's out tonight too, maybe would have a little lean toward Philly against the spread if Embiid plays. But I think there are better spots on this slate. This is a game I'm likely to stay away from. So Isaac says, I think I saw Danny Green might be out too. Yes, Danny Green, at least last I saw, was a game time decision. And I went and read about their injuries, and all the game time decision guys, it did sound kind of iffy either way. So, yeah, definitely watch the injury news. I mean, if one of these teams ends up having everybody in and the other one sits everybody, and you can hit it quickly before the line moves too much, definitely could find some good spots that way, but you'll have to pay close attention. Second game we're going to look at is the Thunder and the Grizzlies. This was destruction the last time these two teams played. The NBA record-setting 72-point spread or whatever it is. I'm going to go ahead and make a guarantee, and that is that the Memphis Grizzlies are not going to win by 72 tonight. If anybody wants to jump in the chat or in my DMs and take me up on that bet, I'd be happy to get after it. I don't think we're going to see that again ever, and we're not going to see it tonight. However, I do think that this still looks like a pretty decent spot for the Grizzlies. So Oklahoma City has everybody healthy. Memphis just has Clark and Morant out. They've been out. So no big news on the injury front there. Oklahoma City in their last 5 games away from home, they had one game where they scored 114, one at 110. The others were, 101 and then under 100 for a couple. We know that Oklahoma City just doesn't score great. They're 5-8 against the spread away from home, and they're 2-6 against the spread on 2 days of rest. So it just sets up to not, based on those in-season trends, not a great spot for Oklahoma City. And I just don't think you can ever count on Oklahoma City to hang in there because their scoring is so bad a lot of the time. Memphis on the other side, I talk about this like every time that Memphis plays, and honestly, I'm going to talk about this, but even last night, it's not like they played so bad. So without Ja, taking the Oklahoma City game out, they're 11-7. This is the point total I was looking at. They're scoring 109.8. Sometimes my notes get me confused, but 109.8. And they're only giving up 98.3. So they're averaging winning games by 11 points plus per game. And obviously, they're going to have ups and downs. They had an offensive down against Portland last night. But now we're getting a big enough sample size to feel like this Memphis team is pretty real without Ja. They are on a back-to-back, and they went 2-2, 1-0 without Morant on a back-to-back. One of those games was in overtime as well, so they've played some pretty close. But here's what I want to focus in on is Memphis's game last night against Portland. So obviously it stinks. Like last night, I bet Memphis, and they ended up getting beat outright, let alone covering the spread. But here's some of the stuff that you have to look at. You can't ever just take one game in the NBA and say that it means a lot. So last night against Portland, they had 33 rebounds. Portland's not even a good rebounding team. 9 of their 11 games without Ja have gone over 47 rebounds. And they missed it by 14 plus. They shot 38.5% from the field. That's their worst shooting mark since Ja went out. They've been over 45% in 7 out of 11. They shot 26.5% from three-point range, also the lowest since Ja's been out. They've gone over 33 in 9 out of 11. So really what we had last night, and I'm not saying it's like a bad beat or something, because this happens in the NBA and you have to be able to try to see when it's coming. But Oklahoma City allows 43 rebounds. They allow 44.2% field goal shooting, 37.2 3-point shooting. So this, again, is not a bad spot for Memphis, and they just happen to have one bad game against Portland, and that's how it goes sometimes. So what I'm looking at here is I do think this is a good spot for Memphis. Again, the question is if they can cover the spread. The spread, let me just check the number here quick so I can get it right. It looks like it's at 8.5 right now. And so I haven't bet it yet, but I don't think that that's horrible. Again, Oklahoma City can't score. And the question is Memphis going to have just a disgusting offensive game again like they did in the last one? And I just don't think it's likely. So I don't hate the Memphis spread here. I also don't hate Memphis's team total, which I think was at like 109.5, maybe 108.5, something like that. And so if you like the team totals, that's a spot that I would potentially look at as well. In terms of the trends, there is a lean in the trends toward the over here. 6 of the last 7 where Oklahoma City played at Memphis have gone over. And that's part of why I lean toward that Memphis over as well. Is if I'm going to bet an over, I think I'd rather just take Memphis to go over than the whole game because I don't trust Oklahoma City's offense. In terms of the spread, the trends are kind of split 50-50, so not a lot for us to take away there. However, Memphis is 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 versus Oklahoma City. So that was one fairly strong trend. So again, I think we had an anomaly for Memphis. Someone even said that. Kevin said that in the chat. Seems like an anomaly. I would agree, and it's going to happen again. Like Memphis isn't going to just play great every game, but I do think they've shown us over a significant sample now that they are a better team than what showed up against Portland yesterday. So I do like them against a bad Oklahoma City team here. The next game up is the Houston Rockets and Chicago Bulls. In this game, we have Amani Brooks as a game time decision for Houston. Green and Porter are still out. Chicago, we pretty much know. Ayo Dosunmu and Zach LaVine still out there, the ones that I think matter in this game. Chicago had a good win against the Lakers last night. I thought they might come out and look pretty rusty, but they really didn't, and played a pretty solid game. I actually really like this backcourt of Ball and Caruso. Both can be decent playmakers. Caruso plays good defense, makes some good decisions. So I kind of like this Chicago lineup right now. And obviously Zach LaVine helps in the long run, but not too bad for the moment. So Houston first. Houston's a team that I've definitely been riding and really liked. If you've been following me this last week, cashed a couple of bets on Houston. And I still do like them, but as I dove back into the numbers, they're 2-6 straight up in their last 8. So they had a really long losing streak early on in the season. Then they had a really strong winning streak. And now, like, they're still playing better. They're not as bad as that team at the beginning of the year, but they're not winning as much either. In their last 5 away from home, they had a couple games where they didn't score well, 89 and 106, but those were against Cleveland and Memphis, who are 2 really good defensive teams. In the other 3, they scored 114, 116, and 132. So they still scored the ball well. And as we've talked about before, so much of that comes down to shooting for Houston. Can they shoot like 47% from the field and 32 or 33% from 3? If they can do that, they tend to score reasonably well. Chicago allows opponents to shoot 44.2% from the field at home, so slightly under the number we'd want to see. And they allow 36.5% from three-point range at home, which is right around where we would want to see it. Chicago is on a back-to-back, though they had like 8 or 9 days off before the back-to-back. But when you look at those, they're 2-2 on the back-to-back. And their most recent game was pretty close, 104-107, but some of those have been blowouts. So I don't think there's a lot to take away from those back-to-backs there. Houston is 8-2 in their last 10 versus Chicago and 4-1 in their last 5 at Chicago. And they've played once this year already in Houston, and Houston won 118-113. This is another game where the trends are pretty split, so I don't really read a lot into it on either side there. All that said, I feel like this is a hard game to pick. The spread, I think, is at like 8.5, plus 8.5, minus 8.5. Oh, it's down to plus 7 for Houston, and there's a minus 6 out there for Chicago. I don't know if some news came out that I haven't seen. Yeah, that number's just getting close. When it was up at 8 or 8.5, I thought about maybe Houston against the spread. But this just feels like a game where I'm still not sure what this Chicago team is with the current roster, and I don't feel super confident betting on this game. I'm going to think about it some more because I have liked Houston, but I think it's a little bit tough in the current situation. The next game is one where I do have something already, and it's always fun when the Hornets play, right? So we got the Hornets and the Jazz tonight. Cody Martin is the only guy out for the Hornets. The Jazz look like they should have everybody in. Kind of a decent amount of stuff to get through here to try to set the backdrop for what kind of picks might be smart here. So first of all, Charlotte, in their last 5 away from home, they're averaging 115.8 points a game, and they are giving up 124.8 points a game. I went early on and looked at the team over-unders here, and Utah's was 124.5. And I was like, oh, shit, there's no way that you can bet that. But that's the average of what Charlotte's giving up in their last 5 away from home. And Utah's a pretty good offense, so kind of crazy. On the other side, Utah, in their last 5 at home, they're averaging 123.8 points a game. So they're close to that 124.5. But they've been giving up 115.4 a game. at home, which is really not what I expected. I mean, I knew they had had a couple higher scoring games, but Utah is, I think they're the number 6 or 7 ranked defense in the league in terms of defensive rating. And so I expect them to be playing lower scoring games. But it's just not what's been happening. It seems like they're playing a little faster and they're really just scoring, really outscoring their opponents by quite a bit, but still allowing a decent amount of points. When I looked into that a little further, what I found is that Utah's defensive rating isn't great versus teams who are really good at offense. So Utah's defensive rating, if you go and look at the numbers, I talk with my hands sometimes. Like if you look at when they play bad offensive teams, their defensive rating is way low, like under 100 a lot of times. But then when you look at teams that are good at offense, their defensive rating is often north of 110 and even up toward 120. So it seems like they're able to shut down the teams they should shut down, but not as much teams that have some resistance to offer offensively. So they actually haven't played a ton of teams that I would characterize as really good offensive teams this year. But here's a few that are at least decent. So they played the Spurs, and their defensive rating was 126.2. They gave up 128 points. They played Cleveland. Their defensive rating was 115.9. They only gave up 108 points, but not a good defensive rating. Played Memphis, defensive rating of 121.9, and gave up 119 points. And then Sacramento, which I wouldn't even characterize. Sacramento's more just terrible at defense, but they're okay offensively. Defensive rating of 110.3, even against Sacramento. Early in the season, their defensive rating was better. This is the other thing. If you go look at like the log of their defensive ratings, early in the first half of the season or so, it was really strong. And the second half of the season, it has not been as strong. So I think there's something to like here with a Charlotte team coming in that can be really good at offense. Now, I've been on Charlotte. Some of you I know have quite a bit. And so we see the games where Charlotte like craps the bed for a quarter usually, right? They score like less than 20 points in the first quarter. And then I forget what game it was recently, but they came back and came close to hitting their team over by like 5 or 7 points, even though they scored under 20 in the first quarter. So it's a team that doesn't tend to get held down for whole games. Sometimes they're terrible for a quarter, though. With Charlotte, it really comes down to shooting. If they can go 47% from the field and 34% from three, they generally score 115 or more. Obviously, one of the big matchup issues here is that it's harder to drive because Gobert is in the paint and he's going to block things. So they're going to have to shoot decent from the mid-range and from outside. In that loss against Phoenix, they only shot 36% from the field and 22.2 from three. So again, my question is similar to Memphis, is like, yes, Charlotte's going to be up and down, but do we really think against a team that hasn't had great defensive ratings against good offenses that they're going to go out and shoot 36 and 22 again? I just don't see that being likely to happen. In terms of trends on this game, there definitely is a strong lean to the over. Now, like somebody asked, Isaac said in the chat, like, why is this total so high? And these are the answers. It does get to feel a little bit hard to bet an over that's as high as this one is. But there are literally no trends for Utah to the under, and there is one trend to the under for Charlotte out of like 15 plus that I looked at. So this is a really strong lean in the trends. And then there's a little bit of a lean towards Charlotte in terms of the spread. So I do already have a bet, and I'll put this out later. I haven't posted it yet. I do that after the videos. But I did already take Charlotte's team total over 112.5 here. I think that this game is likely to be high scoring. I thought about the total in general, and this is a spot where I'll be watching live. If that total can come down into the like lower 120 or 220s, there's a good chance it's something I'd hit too. I also am considering putting something on Charlotte here. Let's see, they're at plus 12 now, which feels like a huge number to me, given the numbers and the trends. The main reason that I haven't done that is I feel like if Charlotte keeps this close, they're probably going to score a lot of points because we know they're going to give up a lot. So I sort of feel like if they cover that spread, they're also going to cover their team total. And I don't really want to double up where I'm losing 2 bets instead of 1. And so, yeah, so I'm in on Charlotte's team total over. I think this is a really interesting game, and we should see a lot of points. Next game up, Sacramento and Golden State. A few numbers I want to share with you here, but this is another big one in terms of the injuries or COVID, whatever. So on Sacramento's side, Bagley, Davis, Fox, Holmes, Len, Mitchell, all out. Oh, actually, I think I saw Holmes as a game time decision now. He got moved back the other way. So that would help them to have a big, right? Like they don't have any bigs. So on Golden State side, both Poole and Wiggins are in COVID protocols now. And one of the things we have to be careful about is sometimes when you see a couple people from one team go into those protocols, other people end up getting added before a game. So I'm a little nervous about whether Golden State gets to this game tonight with the rest of their team intact, other than those two guys. But we'll see. Oh, nice, Kim. Kim said last night Charlotte had 15 in the first quarter, right? And they still ended up with, like, if you give them another 10 or 15 points in that first quarter like they normally have, their total would have been fine. So, yeah, that speaks to what I was talking about with Charlotte, man. So Sacramento is on a back-to-back. They're 2-3 on back-to-backs. Again, this is a game where I just feel like it's going to be hard to read a ton in because the rosters just aren't what they have been. So how do you even know what's going to come out here? The one thing that I think we can look at is how has Golden State been without Wiggins and Poole? Not a lot to look at in terms of both of them being out, but let's take them one at a time. So with Wiggins, their offensive rating has been 9 points better. And then with their defensive rating has been 22 points worse without Wiggins. Poole, their offensive rating has been 4 points better, and their defensive rating has been 16 points worse. 16 points better without Poole and 4 points better on offense. So I think the thing here is that those two guys, like the numbers that you would look at, kind of wash out. It feels like they might be a little bit different on defense. Let's see. Just checking the chat here. All right. So in terms of analysis here, I would just say it feels to me like Sacramento has almost nothing left other than Halliburton. They do have Harrison Barnes, and he's been decent this year. But right now, I would say Golden State has serviceable pieces. I think they have the chance to still be a decent team with these guys out. But I can't get to this spread. I think this spread was like 11. Let's check what it is now. 12.5 or 13 I'm seeing out there. Like, I can't get to that on a Golden State team that's got Wiggins and Poole out, even though, yes, Curry is awesome and could go off on any night. And I love the Warriors. I love them at home, but I just can't get there. So if I was going to look at anything here, I think I would consider Sacramento's team total over 104.5. They have been scoring in that range away from home. They did have one game that was 92 recently, but other than that, they've been right around this number. And I think Golden State might be hurting a little bit on defense with Wiggins out. I don't know that I trust Sacramento enough to actually put a bet on it, but as I was looking at things, that was the thing I probably liked most here. All right, we're to the last game of the night here. It's the Spurs and the Clippers. Doug McDermott is out for the Spurs. I did go look at the numbers with him out, and it really is a wash, like not much difference. I think it helps to have another shooter on the court, but that the stats are just saying doesn't really matter. Paul George is a game time decision still, so that's something to watch with that elbow bruise if he's actually going to come back and play tonight or not. San Antonio is on a back-to-back here, and they are 1-2 on back-to-backs, 1-2 against the spread and straight up both. But San Antonio definitely has been playing better away than they did to start the season. We've already talked about this, but if you look at their last 5 games away from home, their lowest scoring output was 104, but they have 114, 128, 112, 114. So they've really been scoring the ball well. The Clippers in their last 5 at home, they did only give up 95 one time, but then it's 104, 111, 115, 124. They are a top 5 defensive team, but when you think about where they'd be on defense, they really haven't been doing that at home lately. Now, part of that is Paul George being out. Their defensive rating is 10 points better when Paul George plays compared to when he doesn't. So they're a much better defensive team with Paul George on the floor. But their offensive rating is actually 6 points worse when he plays this year. So it really doesn't necessarily help them offensively when Paul George is in. And I think that could especially be true with coming back from an injury and kind of getting back into the swing of things. San Antonio is 8-6 away from home against the spread this year. And the Clippers are only 8-11 at home. So a little bit of a lean toward the Spurs there. Now, here's the big thing, in addition to the numbers on this game, is when you go and look at the trends, it is overwhelming toward the Spurs against the spread. San Antonio's 4-1 in their last 5 away games. The only thing I could really find for the Clippers is that they're 5-1 straight up in their last 6 versus the Spurs. But this isn't a straight up game, even though it's not a massive spread. It was at 4.5 the last time I looked. I'm actually hoping. Oh, there is a +5 -114 out there right now. It seems to be shading that way a little bit. So I'm kind of watching for Spurs -5 if I can get that close to -110. I think that I would definitely lean with the Spurs here, coming off of not a stellar performance yesterday against a Clippers team that's really up and down with really strong trends in that direction. So that's another spot that I like, and I haven't bet it yet, but it's something that I'm watching. All right, that is all the games for today. Hope some of that info was helpful. I will tweet out whatever I end up being on. Obviously, like I said, I'm on the Charlotte team total over already, but I'm sure I'll end up on one or two other spots as the news shakes out today. At NBA Attack, 1A in the middle there on Twitter. Always love any interaction too. I appreciate you guys who have been tweeting things at me, information that comes up, questions, whatever it is. Can always DM me. Appreciate the chat today too, guys. That's fun. So thanks for joining in today. And hey, let's get off to another good start this week. Last week was killer, but obviously would love to start another good run today and get back up toward that 20 units again for another week. We'll definitely try it. Appreciate the love in the chat too, guys. Thanks. Appreciate you. Talk to you later.